morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us on episode 115 of Blowback, Exposing Imperial Decline. I have got my regular co-host, Ian Kummer, with us from a suburb in Moscow, and I have a Moscow expat, Vladimir Golstein, currently in
Providence,
Rhode Island. Okay. And he is being very generous with his time in between classes there at the university. Is it Brown University?
Yes.
Where he is a professor of, I want to say Slavic literature, but I'm probably going to...
Slavic studies.
Slavic studies. Okay, so thank you very much for your time. I want to get right into it. We titled our episode I titled it Israel Backs Down. It's a little bit of a provocative title. I'm not sure that's what will end up happening, but I think there is a possibility that could be happening. And I'm just curious. I really want to get Vladimir's take on the situation in the Middle East right now, or West Asia, as it's also known. Israel has been claiming they're going to be responding to the most recent Iranian attack from that was on October 1st. And we've been waiting and waiting. What are your thoughts? What's that? Oh,
yeah, I would say for starters, I would divide between like Israel as a country and Netanyahu. I don't know what Netanyahu has his own kind of policies and positions, and he obviously wants to stay in power. And one way for him to stay in power after the country's disappointment in him for a number of reasons, including allowing this October 7th happening, is that he escalates, he raises the temperature, he raises the attacks. Where Israel stand, what is their interest? Can they sustain all the wars? Are they interested in all the wars on all the fronts? I kind of have no idea. I'm not sure they can handle it. I'm not sure they want it. But at the same time, I'm not sure that the one serious opponent of Israel and a contender for power in this area, Iran wants it. So I have a feeling that they engage in some kind of a very elaborate kind of dance. If you see some animals, some two bears or something, they kind of make these threatening moves and they do something, but they're not kind of ready to go all out the war. Because if Iran goes like all out, that means, U.S. can get involved, Israel get involved. If these guys, Israel, go all out, Iran will sort of can escalate. We're talking about, not only like human loss, we're talking about disruption in oil supply. We're talking about all this kind of other things, and it will be very detrimental for Democrats in power. So I don't think they encouraging it. I also think that Netanyahu now, he seems to be rising in public opinion because he successfully, he has a series of successful attacks against Hezbollah leaders, but I don't think he'll succeed in the same level against Iran. So I think that each country showed where I'm a tough guy, I'm the toughest guy on the block, and don't mess with me. And I suspect they probably both will try to back off a little bit. But this is a short term. How to solve the whole issue on the big level, I have no idea.
Thanks for that, Vladimir. Ian, what are your thoughts?
Well, so I wrote about the October 7th thing and my predictions for it right after it happened. I was saying at the time it was a very difficult situation for Israel to retake because it was a military defeat. It was a sign of military weakness. It's not good for guys on scooters and paragliders to run over your border guards like that. It was very serious, but they kind of had retaliated but a protracted military conflict. I didn't think they were prepared for that either. So at the time, I was predicting Israel would try to do something that they could, try to do some sort of military action. They could mark it as a victory within 1 to 3 months, something. I don't remember the exact figure I gave, but it was something short like that. I did not at the time expect to be having this conversation we're having now, a year later. I think the other issue, and I've seen other people, I've seen other commentators say this is kind of the take I agree with too, that Hamas is Israel's weakest opponent. It's not their strongest opponent, it's their weakest opponent. Hezbollah is stronger. Of course, I'd say the top regional adversaries, like Vladimir said, Iran. So if they're not prepared, if they couldn't, because they still have not won. They didn't get most of the hostages back. They haven't, and there's still rocket attacks coming from from Gaza. So they haven't beaten Hamas. I mean, they bombed the hell out of it, and they've killed a huge number of civilians. Anywhere between 40 and 200,000 civilians, but they still haven't won. And that's not a show of strength that impresses people. I could bomb. I mean, any industrialized military can kill a lot of civilians. Anybody can do that. It's not a show of force that impresses anybody. It doesn't make them look last week after the October 7th attack and the cross-border incursions. I mean, the cell phone and pager attack was a good intelligence victory for sure, but the cross-border incursions did not go well. Those were mass casualty events. It didn't. It's not looking good. I don't know. I'm sorry. I'll try to be brief, but I don't think it was necessary. I mean, yeah, there was American pressure for Israel not to retaliate too much, but we have to look at regionally. Israel is not Ukraine. It's a small country, and I don't think. I'm not an Israel expert, but I doubt their infrastructure is built to survive a nuclear war like Ukraine's is. Like Ukraine's Soviet architecture is hardened, is probably the most hardened network in the world. But Israel's isn't like that. So if Iran's just like, we're just going to go all out and destroy every salination plant. It's another thing. Water salination is a major part of their water supply. If we're just going to destroy everything, everything's going to be without power, without electricity, without clean water, without internet, without everything. I don't think that was something Israel was prepared for to handle. I mean, Iran's kind of in the same boat because Iran is one of the most sanctioned countries in the world. And, they have grown economically, but they have problems and they have a lot to lose because they would be devastated in a regional war too. But Israel's kind of in the same boat. So that's
so I think Vladimir is spot on, right? Like nobody really wants to go into the big regional war. The U.S. doesn't want it. Netanyahu really doesn't want it, and Iran really doesn't want it. But it seemed like Netanyahu was really pushing for it, right? It seemed like that's what he was trying to get, and now that he could have it, it looks like that they're really doing some behind the scenes dancing, like Vladimir called it. Because Israel is very vulnerable, like you're saying, Ian. But it just occurred to me over the past couple of days that Israel could be looking for an exit ramp that is not another step up on the escalation ladder. And I think that's good, but it does maybe show some weakness from Israel.
I would say, and of course we're talking about Israel, and it's not good to confuse the issues, but I think both Zelensky in Ukraine and Netanyahu in Israel, they are kind of war presidents. So if the country settles on peace, they'll be like out, they'll be questioned because, Zelensky allowed tons of his own population to be killed, tons of people run away, destruction. So once there's time of peace, it'll be time of questioning. The same thing with Netanyahu. If there is a peace, people like, Jan point out, people will be questioning blatant failures on this border with Gaza. How does it happen? He obviously now, we can deduct, he probably put all his intelligence resources in Lebanon trying to spy on Hezbollah, and he left this other side, southern side of the country, totally kind of vulnerable. So this is not good. So he'll be probably, at the time of peace, they both will be kicked out of town in shame. So I think they're interested in maybe slow going war, not like full escalation, but kind of continued. Zelensky is doing very well with the slow war every time. Okay, he can start with 40 billion from US. Now US his own trouble. Well, give me 8 million. Billion. Give me a couple of billion. So it's better than dealing with the ire of your own local population and being kicked out. So that's what he kind of proved. The same thing with Netanyahu. He kind of he keeps on pushing. Basically, I think it's time to come up with a different leader, the leader who would try to make some kind of accommodation with every party concerned, because we all know that violence never solved anything. They just keep on exchanging, violence, terrorist attack here, killing of civilians there, and then what? So Israel can probably inflict a lot of pain on both army and civilians, but it doesn't solve anything. So there should be some kind of solution. But I would put here, there is a lot of confusion, in my view, among this kind of people who are interested in alternative point of view. Many people think that Israel runs the show. I don't think so. I think US runs the show. I think US should probably have credibility and develop credibility with all sides, with Iran, with Arabic world, with Israel, and try to sort of preside over the peace. But when was the last time that US ever did anything like that? They just driving. They had preferring to have some stupid, proxy wars, using Israel sort of to harass, everyone there, using Ukraine to harass Russia. So U.S. is not quite ready for this role, and neither its proxies are ready. So, as a result, there'll be slow going, probably military exchanges, and population will be kind of suffering. And so another hope, if U.S. is not capable, then eventually local people, be it in Ukraine, be it in Israel, say, time for a new leader, because this leader is just...
Do you see that there's a chance of that happening? I mean, it seems kind of a little far-fetched that, they're going to be able to get Netanyahu out of power anytime soon, especially during all of this conflict. But I mean, what do you think the chances are?
I think they have more chances than in Ukraine, because in Ukraine he already banned all the parties, all the elections. In Israel, I think it's still kind of probably possible, and with a lot of tension. Of course, the key is that half of the population in Israel are still really in anger from this October attack, and half of the population probably want to go on and want to send bombs. So, but I think sooner or later it'll begin to sink in, especially when of course you can be demand of pushing on if your military campaigns are successful. I suspect that there was this moment of giddiness after the bomb attacks on Lebanon, after this, the gadget attacks and so on. But sooner or later, it will start sinking in. Terrorist attacks all over Israel, inside Israel, shooting. People would say, we need actually to negotiate. I actually believe that there will be pressure from inside. In Ukraine, I don't know whether it will happen.
Let me ask you. Well, sorry, Ian. I know I have one question that I just gave you. Vladimir, how strong do you think the faction is within the U.S. ruling establishment that would like a hot war with Iran right now? Like, there's some people that, with their rhetoric at least, that, are saying, hey, we need to go to war with Iran. So I'm thinking of like Lindsey Graham and these people. How strong is that faction that's pushing for Armageddon right now in in West Asia?
My feeling is that there are still more sane heads, and if you look at the history of US, if you look at it, there's a lot of documents. during the first confrontation with Vietnam, there were actually voices saying we should nuke you,
Yeah.
Vietnam. There were some people who wanted to nuke Russia, even while it was like still ally after Second World War. So there is always certain kind of groups, and usually when you read the reports, it will be like, say, 12 generals, and like 5 of them wanted nuclear option. So I suspect that there is still the same, hardcore people, but I also think that there should be enough intelligence who would bring the opposite result. It will backfire. This is, Iran is giant, big country, 90 million people, pretty sophisticated, a lot of young people, a lot of sort of, so just to provoke them into like all-out war. I think there is enough analysts. But remember how the story with Cheney, whatever documents he would get from CIA, he said, no, that's a bad report. Go find me a different report. So CIA will be giving these politicians, I'm sure they have enough kind of assessment. They would give them, it's a stupid idea, but no, go find me some bad report. So there is, I would say, a 40% of the US establishment probably will exist, but I still hope that majority are smart enough not to go this way.
It doesn't seem like there's really a consensus right now. I mean, there's factions that want a war now before the election because that could help Trump. There's factions that are trying to put it off until after the election. It's just not clear where things are going to fall. To me, at least, when I'm trying to analyze and figure out what's going on, there just seems that there's definitely no consensus that's been determined yet. Ian, I'm sorry, you had a thing to say a long time ago. Maybe.
I was just going to say it's kind of, it's really incredible how almost every disaster in the last probably 24 months, in the last 2 years, can be directly attributed to something Biden did, right? So there was a tentative peace negotiation between Yemen and Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia allegedly was even offering reparations as part of the deal, like they would help rebuild Yemen, which, considering who we're dealing with the Saudis, is pretty generous. Be generous for everybody, especially them. But it was Biden who essentially threatened the Saudis to renege on that deal. It didn't go anywhere. Same thing with Syria and Turkey. They were in talks. Turkey was like, if you do something about the Kurdish problem, we will withdraw our troops. And then, of course, he stomped on that. And then there was the Iran deal, which was done by Trump, but Biden doubled down on it. Iranians were like, we would accept coming back to the table and reinstating that deal. That's basically what they said. But Biden didn't want to look weak on Iran, so he reneged on that too. Now you see all of those things kind of coming together. Yemen's blocking the Red Sea, Syria is Israel's bombing Syria, and then you have Iran, which if they still had that deal, Iran would have a lot to lose from escalating with Israel if they still had that deal, if they still had access to their funds. So it's kind of incredible to see this perfect storm of mistakes all coming together at once. It's pretty incredible, actually.
They are not, they're clearly, the whole establishment now, the State Department, a fair amount of people in Pentagon, fair amount of people of probably in security agencies. They are not particularly competent, and I think they found their perfect match in Biden. So they've been pretty erratic. They're trying to sit between two chairs. They're trying to kind of, rather than having a consistent policy, now they're trying to appease this group, and they also try to appear different from the Republicans. So they, I don't think they have any kind of a clear vision. I don't think they have clear kind of understanding of each regional thing. They're trying to have some kind of establishments, but this was a good example between Saudis and Yemenites, because okay, remember how Saudis were taking Yemen, and U.S. always like tries to protect Yemen, but now Yemen is an enemy, while Saudis, our allies, but then Saudis kill one of the journalists. Now they're not. So there is no kind of any consistency. There is a desperate attempt to appeal to all sorts of local constituents. Oil men tell, let's be kind of friendly with Saudis. Some liberal groups say no, let's put pressure on Saudi. So and Democratic Party, they don't have true vision. They don't have kind of they don't have a true base. Actually, they are looking for, they lost working class. They definitely lost working class. So desperately running for any kind of group which they viewed A, somehow abused or marginalized, and B, hoping that they will vote for them. That's kind of Democratic Party. This is not a party of, say, vision, of policies, of something. So I'm not surprised they're doing all the stupid mistakes.
So what about, so Trump is saying he's way more bellicose. He's a lot more anti-Iran. And, Obama thought, we'd put in the JCPOA and we'd have this agreement. We'd get Iran into the fold. We would export Iranian, energy to Europe because they got cut off from, Russia. And then, that'll be our solution. And Trump really killed that, right? Trump said, no, we're not doing the JCPOA. And then he killed Soleimani, and now he's really talking bellicose. If I get elected, I'm going to go to war with Iran. Essentially, is what Trump's saying. Whereas, Trump on Ukraine, he's a little bit more, he's a lot better than Biden on Ukraine. So it's just weird. And are we to take them at face value? Like, should we believe Trump, or is this just all politicking in preparation for November? And their actual agenda might be quite different from, the positions that they are pretending to take. Do we trust Trump that he really does want a war with Iran, or is Trump sane enough to realize that that's a bad idea?
He, in my view, he is such a big unknown. I don't think, first of all, let me put it this way. I don't think Trump knows what he's doing. He himself, he was just, we see him, he, probably what I appreciate in him, at least I want to believe in it, when he was talking about, art of the deal, that he actually can be pragmatic. And that's probably his only good value in a dealing. Of course, you push, you try to kind of threaten your opponent. You say that this is how much I'll pay you, but the opponent says no. To develop this land, you need this. So he'll eventually make a deal. So my hope is that he will be amenable, and I think the same thing. Iranians, they are pretty practical. They know kind of everybody wants to sort of make money and be prosperous. So I suspect that despite his rhetoric, he will be willing maybe to sit down and argue maybe from the position of strength. But that's one hope. But he, as you said, killing of Soleimani and going through all these crazy gestures does give one a lot of confidence in his deal-making abilities. So I don't know. I mean, I still think that pragmatism. He also probably, my feeling is, if we approach sort of kind of traditional sort of wish class or whatever approach, that behind Trump stand a lot of kind of local business, and it's not like global business, but kind of local business, and local business probably rely on oil, rely on trade, rely on this and that, and they probably would put pressure on him not to go to the war, because who benefits from war is maybe military industrial complex, but not other businesses. So as opposed to, I suspect that Democrats became the party of big banks and big military industrial complex and big bullshit propaganda. There are three forces behind Democrats, but not local businesses, not people who can travel, buy rugs, sell rugs here, build something little gadgets which they will sell to Iran, which needs it, so on. So I again, I feel I hope that he will have enough people. But another thing, we saw it during his first kind of reign through his rule. He tried to have some sane people in State Department. I don't think he had enough. He tried to have some people to work in his security.
Yeah.
These people were kicked out. They were tied up to Russia, to this, to that. So to implement all these policies, you have to have mechanisms. You have to have people. I'm not sure Trump is patient enough and diligent enough to kind of put all this, and then. So I don't know. I look very pessimistically at U.S. elections. I think it's going to be like, bad deal on both sides.
One thing Trump has been consistent on is his pandering to the to Israel and the Zionist lobby, right? Like, I mean, he's really been consistently pro-Israel, and now he's really ramping that up, and he's kind of banking on the donor class to, he's just pandering to them, telling them, hey, don't worry, I'm there for Israel. I'm going to destroy Israel's enemies for them. All you got to do is elect me. And if you don't elect me, Israel's probably going to get destroyed. I mean, that's essentially what he's saying. And so the question is, if that works out and gets him in office, I hope, like you say, he's going to have enough sense to be pragmatic and not plunge the world into a global economic catastrophe, which would definitely happen if we have a regional war with Iran, because the energy prices are going to skyrocket. Iran is going to retaliate against the very vulnerable U.S. military installations and against Israel's infrastructure, and this will make it impossible for it'll really strengthen the hand of the Lindsey Graham type war hawks that have been wanting a war with Iran for a long time, and it would make it impossible for us not to go down that road. And I think, I hope Trump knows better than to do that, but then he'd just be two-faced, because then everybody would say, well, you're lying right now. Like you're telling everyone that you're going to do this, you're going to take care of Iran. And then if they elect him and they get him in office and he doesn't do it, like there's going to be a lot of pressure. Anyway,
I think everybody is putting more thought into what Trump says than what Trump himself puts into it. I'm being serious. Because the thing is, what everybody seems to be forgetting is that Trump is not president. It's very easy to, when you're not president, say, if I was the president, I would do a better job. And that's actually how I would summarize everything he's been saying. It's like, Biden's doing a bad job with Ukraine. I would do a better job if I was president. I would do a better job with Israel and Iran. That's all it is. I would say, if I do think what's absolutely true, if we did have a President Trump rather than a President Biden, I don't think Netanyahu, and I do, even though he does constantly pander to Israel and the Israeli lobby and all that, I don't think he could be taken for a ride for 12 months like Biden's been taken for a ride. It's like, if you were, because he's a businessman. I mean, imagine if he hired you as, say, a plumber or a contractor of some sort for one of his buildings, and you were just taking him on a ride for 12 months, taking his money and not giving him any results. The building is still torn up, and he would fire that person. And I think it's the same with this. He would want Israel to show me a roadmap. What is the victory condition? What are you trying to accomplish? But that's not happening with Biden. They're just give me more money, give me more weapons, give me more money, give me more weapons, and they don't give him any results. And I don't think Trump would throw himself on his own swords like Biden's willing to do, like, just letting Netanyahu walk all over him. And I think that's actually the issue with Biden, because he's kind of the perfect boss. He's that guy he's basically a vegetable. The people under him could do whatever they want. Lloyd Austin can take a vacation for his prostate cancer because he shook hands with Zelensky and immediately got prostate cancer afterwards. That seems to happen with people who touch Zelensky. But anyways, I don't think you can take Trump for a ride.
No, that's fair. That's fair.
I think both points are very well taken. So I mean, one thing I agree with Billy Bob that Trump definitely has to expand his kind of base, and he should talk to, like American Jews, similar to Israelis themselves, have very conflicted view of Israel. Some are like hardcore Zionists, some are that. So, just trusting some kind of radicals who are, expression is kind of born again people, they can be holier than the Pope. So a lot of Israelis want a peace. Some Americans reach fools who do not live under bombs and who do not live under, they don't want a peace. They want a sort of hardcore go. So, there are diverse opinions, including in Israel. So maybe Trump and his pragmatism, like Ian suggests, would listen to all of this and just like boom. It wouldn't get anywhere. And so to trust these people who live in Miami or New Jersey and say Israel should sort of bomb, I wouldn't trust them fully. And he should get something for his work. And I think we saw it actually. I remember under his rule, there were like attempts to make between Israel and Saudis, Israel and Qatar. There were all this kind of agreements. So he was actually trying to negotiate some kind of, and they were breaking. Then of course we had this kind of probably Iran feeling edged out, and they began to. So I think somehow kind of it should be comprehensive. So I think that sort of somehow kind of all the players should be brought in rather than excluding them. One hopes that as Ian says, that he'll be pragmatic enough. He might start with these guys, but then we'll say, okay, I gave you weapons, you bombed, but the fighting is going on, escalation goes on, business is doing bad. Let's put Iran and Israel in one room, and maybe they will negotiate. At least I envision him doing it by bullying both sides, as opposed to Biden or Democrats. They will never do that. They will just be kind of.
What do you think? Like if the Democrats got their way, how would things play out? Like if they get Kamala in, which I think there's a good chance that Kamala could be the next president. Like what kind of a strategy are they going to pursue? Do they believe that they need to deal with Iran and get regime change in Iran? Or are they going to be pragmatic enough to know that that's going to not be in their interest? But it seems that there's a movement to put the Los Angeles Iranians back in power, reinstall the peacock throne there in Tehran.
I mean, they might try it, but I think they failed miserably even in Latin America, where they had much more muscle. They keep on losing in the countries from Venezuela to Bolivia. So I'm not sure that they can do that. What they will do, I think, basically they will pander to political forces. They will get some money from whom you call like Zionists. They will get some money from anti-Zionists. They will get some money from this, from that, and try to sort of, do a little bit here, do a little bit there, say all good things without accomplishing anything. But I can imagine, because they're all political animals, the Democrats, I can imagine them taking drastically different policy vis-a-vis Israel, because they're going to lose in elections right away. They cannot do that, and they don't have a vision. So they will try to pamper whatever. Again, not by some kind of pragmatic thing, but just basically in pragmatic sense that to have money in their war chest for next election. That's how they would. Yeah, you're
very cynical. It's a very cynical view, but I mean, the status quo seems so unsustainable. Like it seems that if Israel's going to back down and not really hit Iran hard, they're going to lose a lot of face, right? Like, I mean, how could they not do something? And then Iran is saying, if you do anything, like it's on, and so how does the U.S. avoid that? Like right now, I agree with you. They're behind the scenes trying to figure out how to choreograph this dance, but it just seems so unsustainable. And like, I don't know if Iran is going to be cooperative. Like Iran might be past the stage that they're willing to cooperate. On the other hand, they do have a lot to lose, but they kind of have like the military seems like that's their winning hand. It's like sure. Iran's going to have to sacrifice some things, but Israel and the United States are really going to be sacrificing. And Iran kind of knows that, so they have some leverage. But I don't know. It just seems like it's I don't know how much longer this status quo can be maintained, and it seems like something has to give, and something's probably going to give soon.
It's from the way I see that Iran clearly has to be given something, but maybe I don't know what they will get. Maybe they will get some guarantees of not all-out attack, but for that they would allow Israel probably to have more incursion in Lebanon, and Israel will secure its northern. So I suspect, like in the game of chess, they're probably willing to lose some of their Hezbollah people there for continuing the thing, but they have to be given something, like either some sort of stability, guarantees, and so on. But then, so it'll be like some kind of low going, like a little conflict, from which, as I said, these corrupt politicians actually always benefit. Low conflict is beneficial for them. They can pump their chest. I'm standing for this. I'm helping this, and that they will continue.
Yeah.
But I don't expect all-out war for some reason.
I mean, Netanyahu is saying, we're gonna respond, and if instead of response, they're gonna give Iran something, that just seems totally opposite of the rhetoric. But yeah, no, I mean that would be the only way forward if Iran is given something. But yeah, it's just hard to imagine what kind of agreement they can come to that's going to avoid.
I mean, Democrats, if they're not fools, they would say, let's agree on something if they talk to Iran, because if you don't agree now, a big Trump will come out in a month, and we'll get Iran might be also kind of malleable and ready to have certain things, because they are not fools for sure.
That's good analysis. Good analysis, Vladimir. Ian, do you have any thoughts? I was going to move to a topic of the recent Max Blumenthal documentary that just came out yesterday, exposing the October 7th atrocity hoaxes. Did you want to say something before we moved on to that?
I would just say I think because of the 24-hour news cycle, and by we I mean the audience, put too much value on the idea of saving face. I mean, once upon a time, people only got news once a week, if that, and I think because we have this constant feedback loop of, Iran did this, Israel did that, Ukraine did this, Russia did that, we expect immediate responses to everything. I don't think that's actually correct. I mean, that's what the media says because they profit from it. They need sensationalism. I don't think it's actually true. I think the people in the room behind closed doors making these decisions aren't motivated by face nearly to the extent that's presented to the media.
Okay.
So,
do you guys know? Are you familiar with the documentary that I referenced from Max Blumenthal?
I did not see it. I saw the posts about it, though. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Yesterday it was when it was first completed and presented to watch. He's been working on it for a while, but the allegation, contained within the documentary is essentially that, Israel had to really overhype, the atrocities that were conducted on October 7th in order to justify, the genocidal response that they've had since then in Gaza. So I wanted to hear Vladimir's take on that, because you might not even consider it a genocide. I know genocide is a pretty loaded term, and there's some disagreement about that, about Israel's response in Gaza. But are you? I mean, would you agree that there was some over-the-top atrocity propaganda that was not true, that was deliberately shoved down the establishment press, and also the top echelons of the political power structure in the United States as well?
I would say, I think if we look at the history, we know that events happen and then the countries, spin it. I don't doubt that Israel spin what's happened, But from my studying of history, literature, tragedies, those who study human heart and human mind, they know that every part of humanity is capable of unmitigated evil. So, I don't question the fact that this Hamas attack was brutal, was evil. There was a lot of violence, but the same thing. Like we can talk about September 11 in the U.S. It was unexpected, brutal. Then, of course, the whole machine started working, saying either it didn't happen or it didn't happen this way, or it is. I think evil happens everywhere. That was evil. Israeli attack was, a response back was absolutely kind of brutal, bombing. But I don't think you even need to kind of exaggerate it. Israelis definitely were absolutely shocked. If we talk about 1,000 people killed or 1,200 killed, I don't know. I think they were killed or hijacked. And then, for the country size of Israel, it was a big attack. I think Israelis were saying that it was like 10, 15 9/11s in comparison. We know that U.S. was it proportionate response in U.S. after 9/11? We know that 19 out of 20 attackers were Saudis, and out of the blue, U.S. attacked Iran and Iraq, yeah, and totally sort of overthrew it. It's absolutely rational. It's absolutely proportional. It was evil, but the first attack was evil too. So I don't view the history as some kind of manipulation, whatever. There is some evil that's done, and then people turn around and they do their own evil. Then they do evil back, and it continues. So there is abuses on both sides, and he is a crusading spirit for sure, Blumenthal. And I know that Israel is it's easy to find fault with them, but it's easy to find fault with many other sort of countries, and so I don't doubt the evil of the Hamas attack, nor do I doubt the evil of unmitigated bombing of civilians in Gaza. So I am willing to acknowledge because otherwise, if we start looking who benefits, then we can go to all these crazy theories like who benefited from the Second World War, this kind of, and then we say, and maybe they orchestrated because they benefited. Maybe they orchestrated Holocaust. Maybe they faked over. We can never. Shit happens in every country. And then skillful politicians, skillful military, and they jump on it. They use it for their own purposes. So in Israel, definitely had its purposes. I mean, it's still. I mean. They don't know what to do with Gaza, honestly. What some kind of anti-Zionist think that this is Zionist project to capture Gaza. I don't know. They already had Gaza for several years. Then they didn't know what to do with it. They backed off. They don't know what to do with it. So, honestly, So I don't know. I think they were angry. Netanyahu knew that his chance he'll be kicked out of the office if he doesn't do anything. So he did it. He responded in the way is the easiest way for Israel society with military, with anger, was to hit back as hard as they could. That's what they did. So I'm not justifying it, but I'm not. Yeah. I don't think they orchestrated it with some long purposes. For simple reason, I don't know what are these purposes. Do they really want to kill 2 million people and just grab this land? I don't think it's going to work. So I don't think it's there. But who knows? We don't know much about this conflict. But I wouldn't buy. I wouldn't right away buy if Israel benefit. That means they orchestrated it.
Right.
I wouldn't buy it.
Yeah, I think. I mean, what the documentary does expose, in my opinion, is a real orchestrated propaganda campaign to lie about the 40 beheaded babies. You even had Biden agreeing that, it was the most horrific thing he'd ever seen when he never did see it. According to official Israeli reports, one 11-month-old was killed and they were shot accidentally when somebody was firing through a door. And that was the only baby to die in October 7th. And then the polling showed that, people were most appalled at the allegations of mass rape. And so once that polling came out, the narrative from Israel switched, and it was no longer beheaded babies. It switched to mass rape. And then the mass rape story just, was proliferated everywhere. And so he exposes how both of those had no evidence, came from the same, the same propagandists, and the journalists that repeated it, were enabling this. And all of this was done in order to enable a very harsh response against Gaza. 40,000 dead that we know of, 50% of the buildings destroyed, and, maybe uninhabitable. Maybe they're going to render Gaza uninhabitable. But in order to justify that and to get away with that atrocity, they had to make up and over, exaggerate what happened on October 7th. And there was a coordinated effort to do that. And who was complicit with that was the Western press and the State Department and the U.S. Government. The Democrats were all complicit in this hoax that never had any evidence for it, but was pushed on everybody. And the further problem with that is that the Israeli people themselves believed these lies, right? And so, and therefore, they supported their own, government and their own defense people who then began to rape Palestinian prisoners. And the polling says that a majority of people in Israel, did not oppose the raping of Palestinian prisoners. And in their minds, it had to have been because of what animals they were, because they beheaded the 40 babies and engaged in mass rape themselves. And so you see how this propaganda is just so problematic, and how it corrupts people, and it's so I don't know. I think it was a powerful documentary, and I think it really did expose the problem with perpetuating these atrocity lies. And it's really bad, all for political purposes.
First of all, that all makes sense what you're saying. And if we back off a little bit, we know from observation, all military conflicts, that the first victim of the war is truth. If you go in the First World War, there was endless amount of stories what Germans did to breeds of French, that they were tie up French or Belgian priests to the bells and use their dead bodies for that. There is a great book by some literary professor, René Girard, on scapegoating. And he basically said whenever one country wants to scapegoat another one and accuse them and they do this and that, there is two immediate accusations: rape of women, their soldiers, and killing of the babies. This accompanied all the wars on the continent. If you want to demonize someone, you go there. Remember how, when Bush, the first Bush, wanted to attack, Kuwait, all the stories, babies ripped out of the incubators. So there's always babies. So sometimes babies happen, sometimes it's all made up. But if you want to rally your country, support your brutality, I know the same thing was happening. If you observe endless amount of stories on both sides, primarily Ukrainians, but Russians do it too. I don't know which one is true. Russian soldiers rape, kill. Russian soldiers rape, kill. They got the Ukrainian population into absolute frenzy that this was Russian soldiers do. Then, so I remember this Bucha, something like so I, and where you're correct, and I fully agree with this idea behind this documentary, is an absolutely shameful behavior of Western press, which just really turns us into zombies. It turns us into this kind of easily triggered people. Show us a baby, show us a sort of story, and we say boom, boom, boom. And we're all victim for that. But but by the same token, we should be skeptical about any story. So say, if alternative press presses the other story, I don't know. I'm not, I believe that in anger Israelis would do that, but I believe that in anger Palestinians would do that. So I think it's it has to be it has to be given thorough study, and B, when when country is presented, it shouldn't be like say, oh, they're demons. It should be presented. That's what war does. We have to stop the war. We should prevent this brutalization and demonization and so on. That's how it should be presented. But how it's presented, evil dictator Russians, evil dictator this, that's what they do. And until it's presented like that, it'll be mass formation psychosis. We'll all get psyched up by these stories, and we'll all have this knee-jerk reaction.
Yeah, people really need to be more savvy, and they need to realize that the establishment press, does not exist to inform you about reality. That's not their purpose. That's not why they're there. It's to, facilitate the interests of the ruling elites. But yeah, so shame on anybody that ever believed those stories to begin with, which I certainly didn't. Ian, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I feel like, and I think because a year has gone by, we've kind of the story has kind of faded in our minds a little bit. But I want to say, I feel like Israel owes me reparations. Like they should pay me reparations for that propaganda, because it gave me PTSD from how dumb. I mean, I remember like there was a story about this, and they're always like their stories always feature these conventionally attractive Slavic girls in military uniforms. And like I remember there was this girl who was standing guard in her village with her dog, and then Hamas attacked. There were like several hundred of them, and she killed all of them by herself with the dog. Like the dog, I guess, was biting them, and she was shooting them. And it was like,
what a hero! What a hero!
Yes, what a hero! And then there's another one where like, these two girls with no training jumped on top of a tank, and just like Audie Murphy in World War II, if you remember the Audie Murphy story, like these two girls jumped on top of a machine gun, and there were like 500 Hamas guys attacking, and they killed all of them by themselves. It's I think the essence of propaganda is portraying your enemy as one as savage, of course, but also weak and strong at the same time, because they're saying Hamas killed 1,200 people, not just 1,200 people. They didn't kill soldiers; they killed 1,200 civilians. But at the same time, they're telling us this one girl and her little dog, her cute little dog, killed 100 Hamas guys by herself. So it's like, are Hamas the worst fighters in the world, or are they the best fighters in the world? Because they can't be both.
With Russia, now yes. They're the worst. Now they're the best. Yes,
right, exactly. Like with Russia, they're losing 1,000 soldiers for every one Ukrainian, but at the same time they're forcibly kidnapping millions of Ukrainians. Well, if you're getting, it's the same thing. But I think that what really the purpose of atrocity propaganda is to distract the audience, because in most wars, especially wars with neighbors, there's not necessarily a clear wrong side and good side. There's not necessarily a clear victim aggressor category. Even in cases where there is a clear aggressor, you can say the blame is like 70-30, 70% of the blame is on one side, 30%, because there's usually something the other side had done to escalate the situation. But what atrocity propaganda does is just takes the conversation away from the geopolitical reasons. Just say, well, look, this side is bad because they're committing all these atrocities. So you don't even look at the geopolitical reasons. You say, well, this side's bad because they're right or wrong, but because they're doing all these atrocities. And it's like how every year, it's like 1939. Every year we're told this is just like 1939. Hitler, this other country that we're fighting at the particular moment, is just like Hitler. He's going to kill 40 million people if we don't stop him. He's going to, turn people into rugs and soap. It's like that. And it's just, it distracts the narrative from saying, maybe that other side has some reasonable people, and maybe we can negotiate with them. Maybe we don't have to turn people into soap. Maybe we can have a middle ground with them.
Well, it's to manufacture consent, and it's to expand the the means in which you can respond as a government to what's going on. If everybody is propagandized to see them as the ultimate evil, that expands your range of options But yeah, they want to decontextualize it, and they want to, appeal to people's primordial lizard brain, just a good versus bad narrative instead of, the complex geopolitical reality of, we're trying to maintain our empire in collapse, and but it just seems so untenable. The big takeaway for me is I don't know how they are going to deal with all of these things, and I don't even know which leader they want. Do they want Trump? I could see that, the established consensus could want Trump for a variety of reasons. And I could see that they could also want Kamala for a variety of reasons. It's just any predictions on who will get elected and what policies they're going to pursue? How are they going to deal with Ukraine? How are they going to deal with Israel and Iran? Any strong thoughts, or are you like me? It's like, man, it's you might as well roll the dice because who knows?
For some reason, I feel that there is enough anger in American population against establishment that they might elect Trump. But I don't immediately see, because for his previous 4 years, he didn't establish himself as some kind of a responsible, consistent leader. So he definitely is ambitious. He definitely would try to make deals here and there. And then he probably will lose interest. And then somebody will write some interview about him, which he will find offensive, and would forget about Middle East and start. So it's not necessarily be kind of improvement, but at least it'll be less maybe predictable, and maybe there'll be kind of some chance for peace, as opposed to Democrats who probably already, they have the institutions which support them, from financial business to military industrial complex, and they will just be milking it until they actually kicked out of town. Because I don't think they're capable of self-improvement. They've been in charge for too long. They're already so parasitic. They cannot. They're not ready to improve. So this is like, and so they would allow all these things to continue without putting enough pressure on any leader, from Netanyahu to Zelensky to sort of more or less to Arabic leaders either, to stop and sort of get down to negotiate peace. I always like, there's Russians and many other cultures have the proverb that bad peace is better than a good war. And I really believe in it, because who needs a good war? Who needs, So yeah, Israelis are so happy they blow up the stupid gadgets that they blow up. But so what? It's nothing is solved. They're losing public opinion. They are allowing terrorists on their streets. They are bringing a rain of rockets from between Iran to Hamas. So are they solving anything? No.
I do agree with the a bad peace is better than a good war, because if you look at, if you follow me on social media, you'll see a very, very critical of Israel. But if you ask me what is my actual opinion for a solution, I'll say it's not, regardless of how you feel about Israel or Palestinians or whoever, you can't always get your way in life, So for me, all of my personal opinions aside, the best solution is what helps people coexist and for no more people to be killed, right? So if it was a 2-state solution, make the Palestinian an independent country, or a 1-state solution where they put aside the Zionist policies and Palestinians and Israelis are in the same state. Whatever solution worked and stopped all the wars, I would be very happy with. But the problem is, at this point, I don't see a way forward. I don't see an off-ramp, because too many people at this point have been killed. You're talking about 5. Because the thing about the numbers we have right now, we don't know, because all of the hospitals shut down months ago. We don't even know. There's no one even counting right now. There's some journalists who say, oh, well, I think 100,000 people are killed, or I think 200,000. I mean, it's the same thing as those military bloggers talking about Ukraine. They don't know. They're just like, even if you visit a spot in Donetsk or Ukraine, say, well, I think this many people were killed. Well, you have no idea. The professionals who are actually counting were all killed or chased out a long time ago. So the fact is, we don't know. But I think it's realistic to say 5 to 10% of the population have been killed, or at the very least severely injured from either shrapnel from the bombing or from just malnutrition, because malnutrition is a crippling. It cripples you for life, especially if you're a child. If you are exposed to severe, it's terrible. And so when you have 100% of the population affected like that, even if the fighting stopped tomorrow, I don't think they're going to forgive that. I don't think so. That's why I don't think. I think October 7th was actually the last day when peace was possible. After that, it became impossible because the only way for a cycle of, and actually I wrote a review a few days ago on my blog of the Serbian movie. It's Pretty Village, Pretty Flame, about the Serbians and the Bosnians killing each other and the messages of that movie. And it ends with basically the Serbian guy's upset that his friends were killed. So he's injured. He's completely laid up in a hospital bed. He basically falls out of his bed and is crawling towards the hospital room of this Bosnian prisoner. And he's going to stab him with a fork he stole from his lunch. And then at the last, so he's crawling. There's blood everywhere. He's crawling. He's towards, because he hates him so much, wants to kill him. Then at the last minute, he decides, okay, it's wrong to kill this boy just because I'm mad about what someone else did. And that's the message of that movie. Is the only way for a cycle of violence to stop is when the stronger party decides, you know what, I'm not going to retaliate. Right, because if the stronger party retaliates and the other side will just retaliate, then they'll just keep retaliating. So it's when it's your turn to retaliate, you choose not to. That's the only way it stops.
No, that's all the good points, and we know that U.S. is a strong part and Israel is a strong part, so they have to stop and slow down. But I mean, in terms of perspectives, I am always thinking, for example, if you study 19th century, second half, there was endless amount of war between France and Germany over this territory, Alsace, and they were just, everybody thought at the time it will never be solved. They were butchering, and Prussia was getting stronger, and Germany continued to this, and grabbing this. Now, okay, endless amount of Germans live under France. They are bilingual. They are in Alsace producing good wine. I don't think they look at this war and say we should go on. But while butchery was there, sort of endless. So in other words, they somehow, history heals. So yes, and even now I think, yes, it was absolutely brutal war, which was rekindled between, all these three religions, three cultures, Serbs, Croats, Bosnians. But now I think, many of them are trying to sort of, coexist. So I think it's possible. We don't know how, but it's possible, provided there is no laceration, provided, I agree with Ian, stronger parts takes a higher position and higher horse and says, enough. But, of course, for cheap, petty politicians which run the show, myopic and narcissistic, they are not ready to take a high horse. And that's where we're now.
I like Ian's point where it's the powerful that have to want the peace, right? And because when the powerful want the fighting, it's easy for them to proliferate these ideologies, and they throw the money around and they get people fighting. And it's not until the powerful agree that peace is in the best interest that peace can happen. And so I think ultimately it's a question of cooperation versus confrontation, as far as the United States goes. And I think they're still on a confrontational footing with Russia, with Iran, and with China. And they're trying to destroy these countries, weaken these countries. And until they make a decision that cooperation is in their own best interest, this could very easily spiral out of hand and get a lot worse than it currently is right now. And I think that's probably likely. I think it's likely that it's going to get worse because I don't see the U.S. making a decision to switch from an approach of confrontation to an approach of cooperation. But Vladimir, you've been very generous with your time. I don't want to monopolize you all day. I don't know when your class is. I don't want to run you off either. If we can keep talking, but if you need to get to class, I can definitely.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. It was fun, and let's do it again. But I was hoping to stay out till 1, which I did, and it was like absolutely. I think not that we are all so brilliant, but I think just trying to be objective. I think what we offer is much more sane than what mass media, which just keeps on pushing and carrying water for the corrupt sort of establishment is doing. At least we're trying to take backseat and try to take bigger view. In any case, nice chatting with you guys, and I hope to see you soon.
Thank you, Vladimir. We'll see you.
Take care.
Absolutely. Bye.
Ian, let's go ahead and wrap up if you're okay, unless you want to continue.
No, I got nothing else. I think it was good off ramp. Since we were talking about off ramps, that's a good off ramp for us too. So
yeah, we plan on returning Friday. Hopefully, we'll see everybody then. Thank you, viewers, and thanks again, Ian. We'll see you Friday.